They say in the West everything leaves a trail, boot prints, wagon wheels, and sometimes blood. But when I found that pup lying in the dust, behind my neighbor's broken-down sheep shed, there wasn't a sound, not even a whimper. Just two black eyes watching me like they'd seen 100 winters and maybe more. That was the first time I saw Grizz. Before we get into what really happened out here, if you love stories about animals, loyalty, survival, and the dark side of all that go ahead, and hit that subscribe button to Animal Story. We've got tales you won't find in any history book, but ones that sure as hell happened. Now let's get back to Grizz. I live out past the Cottonwood line about 2 miles from the nearest paved road. Folks around here call me Shep, short for shepherd, not because I'm holy or anything, but because I raise sheep. My ranch ain't much, just dust, sweat, and stubbornness, but it's mine. It was late summer when I first found him. I was checking fence posts after a coyote scare the night before. That's when I saw the little guy, filthy ribs showing and limping like he'd tangled with a bobcat. He had one ear flopped over the other, standing straight like he was half listening to the world. Something about him made me stop. He didn't growl, didn't bark, just stared. The strange thing, he was sitting right behind Jed's old shed, the one that had been empty ever since Jed disappeared a few weeks back. Folks said Jed ran off. Maybe Mexico, maybe Montana. Personally, I figured he'd drunk himself into a ditch somewhere. Either way, his land had gone quiet. No more sheep sounds. No more of his shotgun blasts echoing at dusk. I should have walked away. Instead, I said, "Come here, boy." And damn if he didn't trot right over and sit at my boots like he'd always belonged there. I brought him home, bathed him, fed him eggs and bacon. Named him Grizz, short for grizzly, on account of his stubby legs and stocky build, and that dark stare that seemed to look right through me. Grizz never barked. Not once. Not when the wind slammed the barn doors. Not when a fox ran through the chicken yard. He was silent, but loyal. Followed me everywhere. Slept at the foot of my bed. Sat outside while I smoked under the stars. I'd had dogs before working, dogs, barkers, fighters, but none like Grizz. There was something ancient about him. Something that didn't belong on a sheep farm. At first I figured it was just nerves. Abandonment does things to an animal. But then the nights started changing. He'd sit for hours at the edge of the field, staring into the dark toward Jed's old property. Wouldn't move. Wouldn't even blink. One time I followed his gaze with binoculars. Nothing but weeds, collapsed fencing, and the silhouette of that old sheep shed. One night I heard him growl. Just once. Low and deep like a warning. But when I opened the door, he was sitting calm as could be, his mouth closed, his head tilted, and something wet on his paw. I thought it was dew, but the next morning I found one of my sheep-dead neck-twisted body untouched eyes wide open like it had died of fear. Grizz sat 5 feet away watching me clean the mess. No blood on him, no wool in his teeth, just watching. I've raised dogs my whole life, sheepdogs, hounds, even the occasional mutt off the back of a truck. But Grizz, he was different, from the way he moved to the way he watched. Always watched. You'd think he was part man, part shadow. The morning after I found my sheep-dead neck, snapped eyes frozen in terror, I tried to tell myself it was a mountain lion. We get those from time to time, especially in drought years. But a cat leaves claw marks, teeth marks, signs of a struggle. This one was different, like something had walked up and crushed the life out of that ewe without even breaking the skin. I started keeping a closer eye on Grizz after that. He didn't act guilty, didn't even flinch when I found the body. Just sat there, tail curled neat beside him like he was proud, or waiting for me to notice. I cleaned up the mess, buried the ewe out near the cottonwoods, and said a quiet prayer. But that feeling in my gut, the one that tightens like barbed wire when you know something ain't right, it didn't go away. That night, I let Grizz sleep in the mudroom instead of my bedroom. First time I'd ever shut him out. He didn't bark, didn't scratch at the door. Just lay down and stared. 2 nights later, I heard rustling out by the west pasture. I grabbed the lantern and headed out with my .22 slung over my shoulder. Moon was bright enough to make out the fence line, but what caught my eye wasn't outside the pen, it was inside. Grizz, standing perfectly still, right in the middle of the flock. Every sheep was huddled at the edges like they were trying to get away from him, but he hadn't moved. Just stood there, watching. I whistled low. "Grizz, come on, buddy." He turned real slow, walked back toward me like nothing was wrong, calm as a summer breeze. But when I checked the next morning, one of the lambs was gone. No hole in the fence, no tracks, just a patch of flattened grass and a single streak of blood in the dirt. I don't scare easy, but I was starting to get nervous. I went into town the next day, first time in weeks, and asked around. Thought maybe someone had seen a stray cougar or heard coyotes acting strange. But what I got instead was old talk. The kind folks whisper in hardware stores when they think you're out of earshot. Didn't Shep find that dog over at Jed's? Didn't Jed go missing just after his dog did? Funny how that worked out. I didn't like the tone. Didn't like the way they looked at me either. Like I was walking around with a curse on a leash. Back home, I decided to dig through some of Jed's things. His place was still padlocked, but out here in the country, we don't call the sheriff over a little trespassing. Especially not when someone's dead or gone. In the shed behind Jed's trailer, under a blue tarp and some old saddles, I found a metal box. Inside a vet receipt, a hand-carved collar with the name Bruno and a photograph. Jed, smiling. Hand on a young bulldog's head. Same busted ear. Same white stripe on the chest. Grizz. But back then, his name was Bruno. My stomach twisted. I sat on Jed's porch for a long while, photo in my hand, wind rustling the yellow grass. If this was the same dog and if Jed never left town, then what the hell happened to him? And what was living in my house? That night I didn't lock Grizz out. I let him sleep at the foot of my bed like always. Not because I trusted him, but because if he was going to come for me, I wanted to see it coming. There's a different kind of quiet out here at night. Not peaceful the way folks from the city imagine it. No. Out here, it's the kind of quiet that makes your ears strain for things you don't want to hear. And lately, I'd been hearing too much. I couldn't shake the photo from my mind, Jed smiling with his hand on Grizz's head. Except back then, he wasn't Grizz. He was Bruno. And Jed didn't disappear, not really. I was starting to believe he was taken. After I let Grizz sleep in my room that night, I laid there in the dark with my hand resting on the old revolver I kept in the drawer. I didn't sleep. I didn't dare. He curled up on the rug by the door. Didn't make a sound. But every now and then, I'd hear him breathing long, steady exhales, almost like he was trying to calm me down, or maybe just waiting me out. Around 3:00 a.m., I drifted off, and that's when I dreamed, if you could call it that. I was back in the sheep pasture fog rolling over the hills. I heard bleating, then silence. When I turned around, there was Grizz sitting on his haunches, staring straight ahead. His mouth was dripping, but it wasn't blood. It was dark, thick, almost black. Behind him, in the fog, Jed. Or what was left of him. His face hollow. Like something had eaten the soul out of him, but left the skin behind. He whispered one word. He remembers. I woke up gasping sweat cold on my back. Grizz was gone. I jumped up, grabbed my flashlight and my boots and tore through the house. No Grizz in the hallway. Not in the kitchen. Not on the porch. Then I saw it. The front door was cracked open, latch busted clean off, like it had been kicked from the inside. And out in the yard, fresh tracks in the mud, leading straight back to Jed's land. I followed them. I know I shouldn't have, but I had to. Not for Grizz, but for whatever the hell was waiting out there. The wind howled low between the barbed fences. That old sheep shed looked even worse in the moonlight, like it was leaning forward ready to swallow me whole. The wood groaned under my boots as I stepped inside, and there he was, Grizz, sitting perfectly still in the center of the dirt floor, just like the first time I found him. But something was different. The ground around him had been dug up a shallow pit, bones and rags scattered in the loose soil. A chunk of cloth stuck out from the dirt, red, checkered. I'd seen Jed wear that same shirt 100 times. I couldn't breathe. Grizz didn't move. I raised my flashlight. His face was smeared with something dark, dried in patches across his jowls. I wanted to call his name. I wanted to believe he was just a dog, confused, hungry maybe. But when I locked eyes with him, really looked, I saw something old in there. Something that wasn't a dog at all. Then he stood up. Slow. Controlled. Not aggressive, just knowing. Like this had all happened before. I backed out of that shed, real careful, hand on the pistol at my side. But I didn't fire. Because for the first time I wasn't sure it would do any good. I made it home before sunrise, locked every door, nailed 2x4s across the back windows, pulled out my grandfather's Bible and put it by the nightstand, not because I thought it'd save me, but because I had a feeling I was going to need it. For 3 days after that night in Jed's shed, I didn't see Grizz. Not a track, not a sound, not a damn trace. I started to think maybe it was over. Maybe whatever darkness had hitched a ride inside that dog finally wandered back into the woods where it came from. But on the 4th day, just after sundown, he came back. And he wasn't alone. It was about 7:30 p.m. I was in the barn, tightening hinges on the feed room door. The sheep had been on edge all week, nervous, restless, refusing to graze. A few even refused to leave the far corner of the pasture. I kept the radio on low static hum and a little Merle Haggard to keep the ghosts away. Then the air shifted. You ever feel that change, like the world around you just holds its breath? The hairs on my arms stood up before I even heard the gate creak. I stepped out of the barn and looked toward the house. And there he was, Grizz, standing at the top of the porch steps. But he wasn't muddy, wasn't hungry looking. He was clean. Groomed, even. His coat gleamed under the porch light like someone had been taking care of him. And that wasn't the strangest part. No, the strangest part was what was in his mouth. He carried something soft, worn, dangling from his jaw. I stepped closer, squinting in the dark. It was a red checkered shirt. Jed's shirt. I froze halfway across the yard, shotgun slack in my hands. Grizz laid the shirt down on the doormat like a gift. Sat. Stared. His eyes were darker than I remembered. Not like a dog's, more like a man's. I tried to speak, couldn't. My mouth was dry as dirt. But my feet moved anyway. I walked up the steps, slow and careful, like approaching something sacred or cursed. I bent down, reached for the shirt. Grizz didn't move, didn't growl. But right as my fingers touched the fabric, he let out a low, vibrating growl. Deep, old. The kind of sound that makes your bones remember things they never lived through. I looked him dead in the eyes. I don't know what you are, I whispered. But I sure as hell know what you did. Grizz blinked just once, then stood. Walked past me, right into the house. Like he'd never left. I didn't stop him. I should have, but I didn't. Because part of me wanted to believe there was still something good in him. Something worth saving. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. That night the dreams came back. Except this time I wasn't in the pasture. I was in my living room. But everything was twisted walls, bending inward pictures, melting shadows crawling across the floor. And there was Jed, sitting in my recliner, face gray eyes hollow. He opened his mouth to speak, but it wasn't his voice. It was Grizz's growl. that low, ancient rumble. Then I saw Grizz at the fireplace, scratching at the baseboard, digging like he was searching for something under the house. I woke up gasping, and I swear for a moment I could hear the scratching. Not in the dream, in the real world. I ran downstairs, rifle in hand. Nothing by the hearth, no Grizz, until I turned the corner and found him sitting at the basement door, waiting, like he'd been there all night. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't trying to kill me. He was trying to open something. I didn't go down into the basement right away. You don't grow up in the West without learning to listen to your gut, and mine was screaming like a busted train whistle. But Grizz, he just sat there at the basement door, quiet, as the grave eyes locked on that knob, like he knew it was only a matter of time. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just waited. That was worse. The next morning I tried to go about things like normal. Made eggs, fed the remaining sheep. Stared too long into my coffee cup like the answer might be floatin' in there. But no matter where I went on that ranch, I could feel him. Grizz, watching. Not like a dog watches his owner. No tail wag, no lazy eye blink. It was like he was studying me, like he was waiting to see if I'd finally open that damn door. By nightfall, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a lantern, the 30-30, and a crowbar just in case, and stood in front of the basement door. Grizz stood too, but he didn't come with me. He just watched as I opened it. And, for the first time since I brought him home, he backed away. The air down there was cold. Still, like the ground itself hadn't breathed in years. The stairs creaked under my weight. Dust floated in the light like ash, and every step down felt like walking into a memory I didn't want. I hadn't been down there in a long time. Last time was to store old gear saddles, fencing wire my father's footlocker. But now it felt different, like something had shifted, like I was meant to be there. The smell hit me first. Not rot, not mold. Earth, wet earth, freshly turned. That's when I saw it. The far wall by the crawl space under the fireplace had been dug out. Claw marks in the dirt. Deep. Deliberate. Not from a raccoon or armadillo. No, these were wide, strong, like something with purpose had been trying to tunnel up from beneath. And beside the hole, a pile of bones. Some small rabbit, maybe. Others, too big. Too human. My knees buckled. I dropped to the ground, breath gone. One of the skulls still had tufts of gray hair. A gold tooth glinting in the lantern light. Jed. I didn't want to believe it. But the shirt. The dream. The silence on his land. It all led here. And then I heard it. A low, wet growl like breath pushing through mud. It didn't come from behind me. It came from the hole. I raised the rifle. Light flickered. Something moved in the dirt. Fast. Snake-like. I fired once. Twice. The shots echoed off stone and wood, but whatever it was, it didn't scream. Didn't run. It just stopped. I didn't stay to find out more. I ran up those stairs like hell itself was behind me. Slammed the door, locked it. Pushed the fridge in front for good measure. Grizz wasn't at the top. He was gone. Now it's been 2 days. I haven't seen him. Haven't slept. I know I should go to the sheriff. Call someone. But what do I say? Hey, there's a demon dog digging up corpses under my house. They'd lock me up or laugh me out of the county. So I sit here, watching that door, waiting, because I know Grizz will come back. And when he does, he won't be alone. I knew he'd come back. Not because I saw him, no paw prints, no howling, but because I felt it in the floorboards. A low thrum like a heartbeat under the wood. Steady. Patient. Closer every hour. It wasn't just Grizz anymore. Something else had come up with him. I didn't leave the house for 3 days. Ate from cans. Drank from the faucet. Slept in a chair with the rifle across my lap, and a crucifix I found in my mother's old jewelry box. I'd never believed in devils before, but I believe in them now. Night fell heavy on the 4th day. No stars. No wind. Just a thick, humid silence, like the sky itself was holding its breath. I sat by the fire shotgun resting against my knee, a lantern lit low. And then it happened. A single slow scratch from the inside of the basement door. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Another scratch. Then the doorknob turned slow steady like someone knew I was watching. It didn't rattle this time. It twisted deliberate. I stood, took the gun in both hands. "Grizz," I called, voice barely above a whisper. "Don't do this." The knob stopped. Then silence. And then a sound I'll never forget. A voice, not quite human, low, guttural, but it used my name. "Shep." I backed away. The lantern flickered, and then the door exploded inward, wood shattering hinges, screaming. Grizz stood there, but it wasn't him. His eyes were black, not dark black, hollow. His body hunched like something inside him was too big for the skin he wore. Behind him, shadows, moving, breathing. And in that instant I understood. Grizz had never been the monster. He was the vessel. They'd buried something under that house. Something Jed must have found. Something ancient. Waiting for a host. And when Jed died, Grizz carried it out. Into my home. He stepped forward, slow and steady. I raised the shotgun, heart pounding like a drum in a thunderstorm. "I'm sorry, boy," I said. "I really am." He didn't stop. I fired. The blast knocked him back, but he didn't fall. He just grinned. That's when the shadows surged. They poured from the stairwell, arms, faces, claws made of smoke and bone. My lantern shattered, plunging the room into flickering orange light from the fireplace. I fired again, and again. Screams filled the house, mine, theirs, I don't know. The walls shook. The ground buckled. The windows cracked from the inside out. And then, silence. When I came to, it was morning. Ash floated in the air like snow. The basement door was gone, burned clean off. So was half the wall. But the shadows, gone. And Grizz, only his collar remained melted into the floorboards. The nameplate still read Bruno. I've sealed the basement, filled it with concrete myself, poured it by hand day and night with salt and ash like the old-timers used to say. The shed's burned. The sheep are gone. And I'm here, alone, alive for now. But some nights, just as I close my eyes, I hear that scratch, that slow, steady scratch, coming from beneath the house. And I wonder, did I bury it too late? So I ask you, what would you have done if you raised something from a pup and then realized it wasn't yours to begin with? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to Animal Story. Because out here in the West, not everything buried stays dead. And not every dog that comes home is still a dog.